Okay, so Arizona race report. I know at least one person is interested in hearing how the day went, but I'd like to structure it a little bit different so that you can get as much out of this video as possible. So I'm going to talk about the lesson that I learned, how I learned it, so I'll go into detail there about what happened. Usually I learned the lesson the hard way, and how you might be able to apply that to your future racing going forward. So that's the way I'm going to look at it, as well as I can go back and reflect on this in the future when I forget about some of these details months and months down the road. So race went well overall. It's a little bittersweet. There's things I'm happy about. There's things I'm a little disappointed in, and I'll go into all those in a second. But I do have to say that the lead up was the best lead up I've ever had. Probably the most fun I've ever had training. I want to thank all of you for training with me, for showing up day in, day out, motivating me, pushing me, keeping me honest, consistent. I wouldn't be able to do it without the club. Specific training partners. Darren wouldn't have been able to make it through some of those long rides and runs without you. Kayla, some of those long swims wouldn't have been able to do without you. Pat put in some great work in the pool and in the gym. So thank you to everybody. Those either show up to the run sessions, Luke, Kiri, Alex, Dawn. Anyway, all you guys just made this lead up a blast. It was hard going 3 months longer, but it was definitely manageable with friends. So thank you for that. Great lead up. Got to the race pretty unscathed. Travel went well. Bike arrived. Got everything put together. I was scared of two major things happening. One, mechanical, because I spent 20 minutes on the side of the road last time with flats. I wanted to make sure the rubber was perfect. So new tires, new tubes. I had a clincher on the front, so tube in there, had my tubeless setup in the back, had that all dialed, brand new everything, best I could do to make sure that I was going to be puncture proof as possible. So hopefully that wasn't going to be an issue. The bike was also dialed. It couldn't have gone over any more. It was meticulous, or I meticulously went through to make sure it was perfect, and I'll talk about how it wasn't in a second. But again, lead up all the way until race morning was fantastic. The other thing I was really scared about is the stomach going. Usually I have GI issues, and unfortunately that was the case again. And I'll talk about the kind of the disappointing factor, but I was able to salvage it and not completely lose the race this time, which was a win. So some wins, some losses. But anyway, race day morning, went to pick up Florin, who was on the other side of the river. I will say lesson number 1, know your route, know the detours, and where you're going to park and how to get there. So that was a little bit of a schmozzle. They had pretty much every frickin' road closed, every bridge closed. Might have done some illegal turns to get to the race site, and then it was traffic backup, and yeah, we got to the race site a little later than I thought. Pretty much as late as you would want to arrive to Ironman just to get everything ready. So that was added a little bit extra stress on in the morning. Then we started walking towards transition, got to transition. Lesson number 2, pack your shit right. So I got to my bike. It was pitch black. Go reach into my bag. Everything is absolutely soaked. And I'm like, what the heck happened? I mean, it was a little dewy and whatnot. So whatever, I start pulling out bottles to put them on my bike. And I grab my 1 liter Gatorade bottle, which had F2C. Pretty much, I'd say, half of my liquid nutrition on the bike. Had proceeded to empty itself completely into my morning bag, which had my goggles, my wetsuit, some glove, my other nutrition. Anyway, everything was completely soaked with sticky F2C. Actually, thank God it's not that sticky, but it was still gross. And yeah, I was like, well, shit, that's the first bad thing this morning. But whatever, it was only losing 1 bottle. I could figure out how I could adjust, maybe take in a little more gel, take on some electrolytes on course. So anyway, that, kind of was what it was. So as soon as I realized that happened, I went to unrack my bike and put my bottles on and my nutrition and just check everything over, make sure everything was looking good. As soon as I picked up my bike and took it off the rack, my seat just fell off. And as soon as my seat fell off, all these little pieces just went bring and sprung all over the place. It was the weirdest thing. So anywho, I'm standing there in the dark, looking at my seat on the ground and all these little parts all over the place going, well, shit. That's a bad way to start the day. So anyway, I left the bag of grossness sitting there and gathered up all the pieces, or at least whatever I could see. I hoped I grabbed them all. Walked my bike and with seat in hand over to the bike tech, and I was like, my seat just fell apart and I have no idea how to fix it, nor the tools. So he took a look and he's like, oh, yeah. He literally said, you're going to have a bad day. I'm like, tell me about it. It's not starting so great so far. So he's like, the back bolt on the seat, which is, if you've ever seen a Trek Speed Concept, there's like a little dial thing on it. It changes the canter of the seat. And anyway, that had completely rusted out. So he's like, yeah, it's totally rusted. Nothing, one is totally proprietary, so I don't have this part. And two, you can't fix it because, yeah, it's all rusted. It's gone. So 8 years it took to rust through this one bolt assembly piece. And of course, it was the morning of Ironman that it was going to break on me. So I was like, well, if there's anything you can do, I don't even care if you freaking duct tape the shit out of it, just so I have something to sit on, like, whatever. So he's humming and hawing and, kind of messing around with a couple things, seeing if he has bolts, asking his other bike techs, do you have any of these bolts? And no one had anything. So I'm just standing there thinking that's the end of my day without even starting. And I was trying to contemplate, do I just go for a swim and call it a day, or do I just start drinking now at 6 in the morning? So after about 15-20 minutes of standing there, I'm like, you know what, I have to drop my special needs bags. I need to get my wetsuit and stuff on. Do you mind? I'll be right back. And he's like, yeah, like, we're doing our best. Well, I'm like, if there's whatever you can do, great. If not, it is what it is. So I went over. I had to go to the water station to rinse off all the F2C out of my goggles because those are all sticky, and the cap and everything. So got all prepared as if I was going to race, still not knowing whether I was going to race or not. And they're doing, they're announcing, okay, we're 15 minutes away from the start. Make sure you're lined up. All the fast people get up to the front of the swim, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, okay, well, maybe I'll swim last again. No big deal. And literally about, 3-4 minutes before transition was closed, he figured out some weird, I think he said brake part and bolt, and he was able to actually make it work and screw it down. However, the pitch of the seat, the nose was pretty high. Well, it was up. It wasn't even flat. It was up. And usually I ride slightly down, so when you're an aero, you don't smash your goods the whole time. But I was like, I don't want you to fiddle with it. I'm happy I have a seat to sit on, and it wasn't terrible, but yeah, it was not comfortable. I'll tell you that by the end of the ride, and I'll talk about that a little more in a bit. So I had a seat. Didn't know whether it was going to hold the whole time. Didn't know whether it was still going to be on by the time I got back. I was very gentle, racking it. And I saw Darren. I was literally got my bike. Darren's walking the other way, and I'm like, dude, day's not going so well so far. But anyway, he was off, and I was shortly behind him. I managed to... So I guess, sorry, lesson learned. You can be as meticulous as you like. I had VeloFix in. I went over my bike with a fine-tooth comb. Sometimes things just break. And they'll always pick the worst time possible to break. There's no way I could have seen inside that assembly. I couldn't see the corrosion. There was no indication ever that there was any issues. It just bad luck. And I was standing there thinking, okay, one of two things is going to happen. One, you're not going to race, and it is what it is. It's super disappointing, but what can you do? So I kind of came to acceptance of that. And two, if this did come together, then there's no adversity left in this day that's going to be worse than this moment here. So whatever comes the rest of the day, I had in my head, at least you're racing. So right from the start, my level of gratitude from this guy figuring it out and actually being able to do the race was that just made the day right there. So anyway, I was able to get to the swim start, kind of traverse, do things we weren't supposed to do to get to the front. Got in pretty much with the front swimmers. Swam alone basically the whole time. Every once in a while I got a pair of feet, but the water was, again, it's pretty soupy. You can't really see who's in front of you when your face is under the water, so you really have to sight above the water, which there's almost a trade-off between the energy expenditure lifting your head to make sure you're still in the draft to just saying whatever, I'm going to keep my head down and just keep swimming your own swim. So pretty much just cruised out the swim, did a 58 and change, felt comfortable the whole way. Water temperature was great. Tried not to drink as much or as little water as possible. And swim was kind of a non-event. It was a big rectangle, and yeah, just kind of was almost on my, felt like I was on my own the whole time, just doing my thing. Exited the water, again, really comfortable. Took my time, but you know, I had a pretty good T1, nothing too crazy. And then mounted very easily and I was off. And trust me, every bump I was like, oh no, please hold seat, don't explode on me, don't, you know. And funny enough, it held the whole ride. So ride's going great. I would say it's a fast course. It was a little windy. First lap was pretty windy on the way out, and then you had a little tailwind on the way back. That was a little slower than my second lap, which the wind kind of died down, and we almost had a tailwind on the way out, so it totally switched directions. Tailwind on the way out, headwind on the way back, but on the way back, it's slightly downhill. There's 1-2% grade most of the time, or at least for half of it anyway. And lap 2 is actually my fastest lap. And right near the special needs, I'd say halfway through, I stopped, grabbed a Red Bull, and I had a ketones in there. Took that, continued on, and starting to get a little bored. And then a group of 4 guys came by, and they were rolling really well. So I tacked onto the back of them, and it's just started having a ton of fun, kind of blowing by everybody. And there's almost so there are a few elements in there. The company was nice mentally, just have something else to focus on than just riding, because it's a very uninteresting course. You do 3 loops out and back a highway. It's kind of boring, other than watching out for everybody on course. So it was nice to have the company there. There was a little bit, or I shouldn't say a little, yeah, there's a headwind from time to time. So even though you're 12 meters back, you still get a draft effect, especially if you're fourth wheel. So that was a benefit. The other benefit was, what was the other thing I was thinking about? Totally forgot. The company, the draft effect. Obviously with the guys, they were carrying a little bit of speed. I'll say maybe there isn't any other benefits. It was a little hot from time to time, and it was a little surgy. I was pushing more watts than I had wanted to. But again, it was just this cost benefit of, do I want to stay with these guys, get the benefit of the draft, kind of roll the dice a bit, go a little faster. And we were making up time. Like you could tell from the lead vehicle, because they had the flashy lights and everything. Especially on lap number 3, by the time we hit the far turnaround, we were catching. At least that's what it looked like. Maybe the tracker said something different, but a lot of guys we were gaining on, making up some good positions, and yeah, it worked out really well. And it was good timing that as soon as I took that Red Bull, that's when I jumped in with them, and maybe that was my demise, as I was just jacked up at that point and probably pushing a little bit too much. By the time I hit the far turnaround on the last lap, so I had 30K left to come back, I had a gel, and that's when the stomach kind of went, I don't know if I like that very much. This is where I think the nutrition testing, I might have made a mistake on, where I switched to the Maurten 160s, the bigger Maurtens, I think 160. I was taking those. I was trying to space it out a little bit, but it may have been a little too much for the stomach at once, as well as being an aero. I really didn't get up from aero very much to let, that emptying happen a little more naturally. It's really hard when you're in that aero position. And then the other side would be maybe the intensity was just a little bit too hot with that group, but I rolled the dice on it. So 30K back, I let the group go. I decided to stop eating, drinking, just let everything try to process, empty in the gut, and hopefully feel a little bit better for the run, which tend to happen. So by the time I got off the bike, I was feeling a little bit better, but not great. I hit the dismount, got off the bike. The legs were not feeling good at all. They were pretty tight. I wouldn't say they were as terrible, and I felt worse, or worse than prior races, but definitely not the good feeling I was hoping for. So already I'm like, okay, I just need to salvage this run. So not a really quick T2. Wasn't bad. I fumbled with a couple things. I don't know if I could have done anything better. I really wasn't ready to run yet, so I wasn't in too big of a rush. Headed out on the run, and basically the winds really started to pick up at this point. So we pretty much had a tailwind on the way out, and a headwind on the way back and is pretty much kind of 4 out and backs. So you're either smoking hot because you had a tailwind and you had no reprieve from the heat, or you were fighting running into the wind, which was significant enough. You're like, oh my God, this is hard. So the run was no joke. I wasn't able to use any gels. It was all just the F2C that I had for electrolytes, because that's the only thing I had for electrolytes, and taking water. So that was all I felt my stomach can handle. Even thinking of gels, I was like, ooh, it is not feeling good just thinking about it. So I managed my effort. I did run a little bit slower. I was kind of optimistic in the beginning and running more like 4:30s, which then got to 4:45s, and then I started getting north of 5, and it just kind of went in that direction the whole time. I will say, lesson learned, cooling, I did very well. 3 Ziploc bags I brought with me, and I used those for ice. So when I pulled up to the aid stations, I got a baggie out, a Ziploc baggie, had the volunteer dump ice in it. That went under the hat. And I had 2 more baggies. The next aid station filled up another one. That went either in the chest or in the groin. And then I had a third one, and that went on the back, which eventually worked its way down to my lower back. And that alone went really good, really controlled for the heat, and it didn't soak my feet. That's the biggest problem when you start dumping water and ice all over yourself, is your feet get soaking wet. Not only is that added weight, which slows you down, but it just destroys your feet. Because as soon as your feet get wet and soft, those blisters really form quick, and that can make for a very uncomfortable run. So I would say temperature management I did perfectly. Fueling, unfortunately, didn't go the same way. So kind of, trucked along. I saw Darren on the first little out and back, and he was probably, I don't know, half hour maybe behind me, 25 minutes or so. And then that was the last time, which meant he was gaining on me. I knew he was gaining on me because he looked really good the first time I saw him too. So pretty much I made it to, I think, kilometer 30 before my stomach decided to empty itself upward. So I puked my guts out in the poshest, most swankiest condo front lawn I could find. So I'm sorry. So everything came out, had a good puke session. Got everything out of the stomach, felt way better. As I'm there puking my guts out, a guy comes up behind me and he's like, "Oh man, you okay? Do you need salt?" I'm like, "Yes, please." So he gave me a salt tab. And once I got running again, I started feeling better. Took the salt tab at the next aid station with some water. That really helped me. I mean, that might have saved my race to get me to the finish line. And then it was, about 12K left to go of just got to make it. So it was managing the effort. It was getting in enough fuel just to get me to the finish line. There's one hill. It's a hill that I opted to walk and just consume Coke and Red Bull and try to get enough carbohydrates that I could get to the finish line, because I had about maybe 6K left at that point. And I was able to kind of rally and get to the end. So, when things go in waves, and you have to adapt. That's another lesson learned. And whereas in years past, I might have just pushed through to the point where I end up passing out in a park, which happened. I was able to make adjustments early, knowing that I need to look after and make change before I go completely deplete, and there's no coming back. So I felt that I did that really well. Again, as disappointed as I was with my run, because I really was hoping to run 3 to 3:15. Like 3 would have been amazing. 3:15 would have been good. 3:30, I would have been like, yeah, okay. And 3:45, I think I did 3:41 or 2 or something like that. That was like if things go bad, I think I can just do this and salvage the race and not totally blow it. So I was happy that I was able to make changes on the fly, make adjustments based on losing nutrition, stomach not cooperating completely, changing my pace early enough, understanding what I could take without totally losing the gut. So again, in that respect, there were a lot of wins. The bike, I would say, was a big win. Definitely a fast bike, regardless. And it was windy. Not as windy as later on in the day, so I really feel for people that were out on the course later. But there's still a significant headwind. And, again, the swim's always just kind of, the swim, and it's pretty solid. So anyway, got to the finish line. Always raise the hands no matter what. I was a little disappointed at that point. I had lost so many places. I believe I was off the bike in first or second in my age group. I knew there was very few spots to Kona. Like maybe 2, 3 if I was lucky. So I was in the right spot. I just strategically lost it at the end. And, finishing top 10 in the age group wasn't too bad. There's a lot of fast guys there. So I really commend them and their performances. To be honest, I was running scared from Darren for the last maybe 10K, hoping he wasn't going to catch me. So cross finish line, again, raise the hands. That is the ultimate lesson. Regardless, it's the journey, not just the day. So you got to celebrate that regardless of how things go. You've accomplished something amazing, something a lot of people can't do. A 9:31 and change, that was a PB for me. It's an easier course than some of the other ones I've done, but I'll take it. And I had nothing left, so I probably should have gone to medical tent. I ended up being stuck on the ground for an hour and a half. I just couldn't get up. I was so depleted on electrolytes, on carbohydrates, that I was just cooked. And other than the Ironman I did with zero training, which if you want to ask me about that one day, I've never been worse. So I knew I'd left it all out on the course, and it kind of is what it is. So again, after the morning and being uncertain whether I'd have any day whatsoever, I was grateful the day I had. I was hoping for a little bit of a better result overall, more in the lower nines, if not 9, sub 9 maybe. But I'll have to leave that for another day. And I learned a lot on this one. I'm happy with some of the wins that I was able to achieve. And yeah, the journey was fantastic. So again, thank you everyone for tracking, cheering along. Trust me, I was thinking about you in my lowest of low moments. And yeah, you got me to the finish line. So thank you again. So that's the day. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other things that I've forgotten, but that is 25 minutes. Lexi, that should be detailed enough, I hope. But again, thank you to everyone for getting me to the start line and, of course, to the finish line. And I can't wait to train and race a whole nother season after a little bit of time off. So, yep, that's about it for the race report. Until the next one, take care.